Our next speaker is Dr. Deep Goswami. Deep is the program lead hydrogeologist at Washington State Department of Ecology. As the lead hydrogeologist, Deep supports the mission of the program by providing necessary direction for the environmental cleanup of soil and groundwater at the facilities, dealing with complex problems associated with the flow and the transport of groundwater contamination and the remediation of radionuclides and chemicals. This position assists the program with cross-program, interagency and interstate duties and responsibilities. Responsibilities include coordination with various expert panels, National Academy of Science, Nuclear Regulatory Commission, interstate federal agencies, tribal nations, and other stakeholders in developing and communicating site-wide policies on groundwater and Columbia River. Deep is responsible for providing expert testimonies before such bodies as the legislature, litigation court on complex hydrogeological and surface water issues. He has served as team leaders of a number of technical teams, including interactions for the ITSC, which we heard yesterday. With that, Deep is going to provide his perspectives in participating in the LFROG reviews of related PAs that have been discussed in the last couple of years. Just for information as background, DOE under Atomic Energy Act, self-regulate on-site disposal activities, which is governed under DOE Order 435. Now, at the Hanford side, our site offices did extend invitations to Washington State, Deep's organization, to participate in the, as observer in the LFROG review process. This is the opportunity for him to share the observations that they have during that process.
Thank you, Wei. I will give the first part of the presentation. The second part on risk budget tool will be given by my colleague Jerry Ockel. Especially, he will cover the risk budget tool that ecology and DOE will be working for the IDF PA. So he's a lead chemist. So after my presentation, the latter half will be presented by Jerry Ockel. And today, before LFROG review, let me summarize and conclude my statement with saying that ecology likes independent review panel. We support wholeheartedly, and we always propose that DOE should involve some kind of independent expert panel to review various documents, especially when those topics are of special interest, not only for the regulators, but also stakeholders and the tribal nations. And I want to give a little bit of background, and I'll try to compare some of the independent expert panels' involvement and with the LFROG. And because each independent expert panel's roles and responsibilities, the way this supported the regulators, stakeholders, and tribal nations are different. I only highlighted 5 here. For example, Tank Closure and Waste Management EIS panel. Back in 2004, it was a 6-member panel, mostly active. And the way they work, those panel members were selected by DOE, regulators, with input from the stakeholders and the tribal nations. So it was a combined effort, okay? It's different than LFROG. So how that independent expert panel interacted with us, or a whole thing, product tank closure waste management, is a lot different than how LFROG or other teams it is. In that, the the tank closure and waste management EIS, after the litigation was agreed that we'll go ahead and redo the whole thing. And then they said there will be independent expert panel. They reviewed each and every documents that DOE produced along with the regulators, and most of the information was shared with the public and stakeholders. We provided our comments to DOE first to clear any clarifying questions, and we go first round of interactions with the DOE and their contractor and clarify things. And still we have, if we have some outstanding issues, we just continue to discuss and provide those informations to the independent expert panel. They come forward and they also review the documents and they share the information and we share that thing and go from there. It's a face-to-face written communication, then face-to-face and all those kind of things. It's a very interactive process. And then we had that integrated groundwater weather zone expert panel back in 1998. Those who were involved, about 8-member panel. Oh, that is a continuous involvement for the 4 years, similar to tank closure waste management EIS. They looked at, they tried to define DOE as well as the regulators and the tribal, the whole stakeholders, how we should move forward with the cleanup for the weather zone as well as in the groundwater. When I talked about the weather zone and groundwater, it's not only for RL side, only the remediation, it's included the tanks also, how the tank closure should be integrated on those things. Again, the similar approach. We give presentation, we look at, we raise questions, DOE and contractors comes in and just we go forward, comment resolutions, and we used to meet quite often compared to tank closure waste management EIS, but very open, face-to-face, very process. Again, those members, as I said, those members are also selected by DOE in consultations with ecology. Tribal nations were informed, but they also proposed a couple of people, but eventually we tried to come to some kind of compromise and we selected. Okay, that's the selection, and the roles are more or less same, how the tank closure waste management and integrated. Then we know the EPA's remedy review board for all anything ROD, right before ROD proposed plan goes for public comment. We as our lead site, so when we prepare something, it has to go to the remedy review board if the cost of remediation is above a certain limit. I think about it was 75,000 or 150,000, something like that. But so we communicate, we give communication, we communicate, and then we just give our comments. Similarly, tribal nations give comments. Then the remedy review board goes back to the Washington, D.C., and they make their decisions. Okay. Then we have the CRESP. I don't see question here, but CRESP here. CRESP is another, it's not our kind of control or whatever, but we know they're involved. And what they do, they review all those risk-related documents, and depending on the nature of the subject and depending on their probably wish or whatever, they come to us and try to share some of their information or give some documents to review us, and then we give comments, and they sometimes goes to the Hanford Advisory Board. They give presentations and we raise our comments, but they don't have to just follow, we incorporated these things. They are a pretty independent working body, you know. But it doesn't mean that we don't, they are not involved with us. Then coming to the low-level waste disposal facility federal review group, LFROG, the Hanford for the PAs. It's a different type of involvement. We are involved with the LFROG group, and whatever they have done, we're happy with that. Let me put that way. As I said, ecology's interest. Let me explain what our interests are. We comply with the regulations. We have different TPA agreements, and we have different kinds of agreements and all those agreements, whatever. And we have related compliant requirements. Now we have the Rev 9 permit. is one of the big issues, is a big thing that we're working on that. And on top of that, no matter what, anything we do, we are always watched by stakeholders and tribal nations. So they have their interest and those kind of things. And we as a Washington State regulator, we are supposed to meet their requirements, listen to them, and see what we can do. We have the responsibility, and we are really struggling with some of these issues. For example, transparency, how these assessments are done. Okay, is there documents are now readily available for public stakeholders or regulators to look at this? Where can I find the information? Is that things are done in out of random? So many documents are created in the Hanford site. So one of the things is always process should be transparent, and one of the big things, let's talk about the uncertainties. So many things are known and so many things are unknown. Did you address the unknown? It's always unknown things, okay? But you address the known things, so that, okay, that's fine. Did you address the unknowns? That's always a big issue. Okay, how did you address it? So those are the things we always, we have to answer. And we try to answer. And we get those informations from the DOE and the contractors and those and we provide what we look forward. And then the whole thing is the consistency. When you have so many uncertainties, unknown, how are you maintaining the consistency across the site, across the modeling, across all these things? You don't know many things. Are you sure this program, that program, and this modeling, and that's modeling, having the same parameter input, same thing, or whatever? You know, are you really looking at the site use scenarios that tribal nations wanted, and the risk numbers that tribal nations wanted? So we look for that thing. So our interest is varied. Okay, and finally, is it technically defensible? And that's I don't want to tell you why that's one of the major issues. That's why the litigation was, when the EIS went for public command of ecology was under litigation, we took quite a long time to solve, come to a conclusion. Clarity is always an issue. And finally, the credibility. So this, I don't have to explain this credibility. Is because of the lack of credibility or question on the credibility, whether it's issues on uncertainty or these things goes quite, can go other way around. So when I say Hanford interest and scope may not match with ecology's interest, you saw already what the ecology's interests are. The Hanford is basically looking at to meet 435.51 or whatever. You define that thing, Hanford review process. So when I try to set a performance assessment and where you calculate the risk and all those things, we always try to keep in mind all those other things that we have to deal with. So it's not that I'm trying to criticize that what's the Hanford scope at these things. You define the Hanford scope. They have to meet this. NRC is involved in those things. We like that thing. That is what they're supposed to do. So then we try our best, and we always try to convince DOE, please involve us early in the process. Especially for the PA process, I'm going to emphasize on the C-tank farm, okay, PA and the IDF PA. They're just both PAs, Hanford are involved. But in both cases, Hanford's comments and their suggestions as well as their what they found out, it was helpful, and we really liked their process. But the process was a little bit different. C-tank farm versus IDF. I'm sure some of those Hanford members probably here, but anyway, it was a little bit different. I will try to highlight a couple of those. I will not go through detail, but probably I have very little time also. In the C-tank farm, we gave our major comments, key points to, I think, to the Hanford, and these are the issues. We used to listen to our presentations, but we are not allowed to, we're not allowed to speak in the front and this kind of, but we had a kind of, we gave our comments and distinct major issues and they tried to answer. In case of IDF, it was present. We attended all the workshop with these things, and we saw that almost a majority of our issues that we talked about, and they nicely covered. In fact, some of the things that they identified and is beyond personally beyond my expectations. But what happened in both cases, in C-Tank Farm, we were involved with DOE and the contractors in the right from the scoping and a lot of workshops. We tried to identify that. Similarly, in the IDF process, it was like that. One good thing at that IDF process, we happened to go, I like the IDF process, to be honest. Yeah, we happen to go step by step what they have prepared, what are the scenarios of analysis they are going to do, all the platforms of modeling and this thing, that's what you saw at least show that. It's been discussed before the Alpha group looked at it. And personally, I think Jerry might also said probably the same thing. And we're so happy with the process. In the C-Tank Farm, yeah, it was good. We had big workshops with the tribal lesson, these things. Then the document came in, okay? Then we came up with even more issues than what we spent in those 3 years of scoping and DQO process. But I'm just talking about this process, how that's going. So it was really early involvement of ecology in scoping and DQO process. It's always a good thing. It's we have gone through those two different examples. It was a good experience no matter what, but we did identify that, yeah, process can be improved. I'll come back to that again. We did identify issues of mutual interest during and after the review process, especially in the C-Tank Farm and these things. And especially when we went through the IDF process between the contractor and the regulators, we discussed very nicely, and these are the scenarios. Oh, good. Did you include this tank closure waste management EIS platform? Oh, yes. So, oh, okay, good. So we had the opportunity to provide views and input either through DOE and directly in the sense with the contractors, with the DOE, and for LFROG, a little bit tangents. I mean, okay, we're taking part and those kind of things. So what are the improvements, okay? We can improve the process. I think that is what I suggest to DOE. This is my suggestion. I think the involvement of LFROG is really, it's immensely valuable to ecology. It's very helpful. So if we are given more opportunities for direct communications with the LFROG during the review process through questions and comments, I just gave one example. So we'll ask questions. Sometimes what LFROG members say also, it's not, oh, okay, they try to cover this, okay, but we have this issue. Hope they have mentioned, hope they really touched or covered our interest too. I think we wanted this way a little bit. Probably they have this in their mind, okay. So if we can have a little bit of more interactions with the LFROG review process, okay, regulators' participation, just like those waste management, just like those tank closure waste management group, independent expert panel, just like those Federal Zone integrated integration expert panel members, just like those similar kind of things. Not elaborate, we are not asking that elaborate kind of these things. You go only for 4 hours presentation on Federal Zone transport modeling, and within that 4 hours or 2 days or 3 days, you have to finish that. And I know you get the document early in the process, we don't get. That's a big difference. We don't get to review the actual document of the document that LFROG group gets it, and they comes up with their question and clarifications. We see their presentations. As I said, we go through that DQ and all kinds of process. We're happy and this thing. What the actual document and these things, we have not seen yet. That is what I said, second bullet, provide adequate access to review the draft documents for better understanding. Jerry will talk about the risk budget thing. why we need that. We are going to calculate risk budget and those things, but we have not seen the entire document. We know what you are presenting, that nicely presented, what are those. So you will appreciate if the access to the final version or even a draft version document for better development that I just mentioned about risk budget tool would be appreciated. That is what I think, Jerry. Okay. Yeah. And this is what I explained, that how tank closure waste management basically identified and transparency leaks. This is,
I'm just going to talk about one thing the state does, Washington State Department of Ecology, is we regulate with a record permit. So I'm sure that's probably different than some other DOE sites. And so we have permit conditions. Approximately 7 years ago, as you can see here, in some of our permit conditions, this for IDF, we actually talked about a performance assessment, and we tried to define that. Interesting thing about that, well, that came out of dealing with what the state needed, responses from the public and tribal nations also. But interesting thing about that is that was prior to any 435.1 process at Hanford. So we were trying to find that, so that then we, and mainly that's just for record chemicals, non-rad, and then, we know this 435.1 is for rad, so, and, but we need to come up with assurance that record chemicals were accounted for. So that's where we came up with language for, and we call it a risk budget tool. And you can see how we're trying to, well, the only thing we had was to go on at the time was a cumulative impact statement, so that was kind of the information. So, you can see some of the language, and you can look at this and you see how the LFROG process and the PAs should be able to take care of most of these details. Just consistent with, state requirements, groundwater model, and then we need to, maybe we would run a model run, as appropriate. Then, of course, sensitivity analysis, and then a lot of this stuff, so all the stuff that now we found out's in the PAs. And then we're comparing to regulatory limits, drinking water standards, and then as Pat showed in his presentation, here's a lot of record chemicals that we're concerned with. So I guess my point is that we need to make sure we collaborate further, we can define, redefine the language in the site-wide permit to include this. So that's my point. So you want to talk about the conclusion or anything, or just
conclusion? There's only one slide. I think we already covered it.
I mean, we pretty well covered this. Yeah. So if there's any questions for
anything.
Yes, thank you, Deep. Thank you, Jerry. Any questions or comments from the audience in response to their presentation? Yeah, Aaron.